Welcome back to the Ready, Set, Go podcast series. Today we're going to be talking about addressing conflict in our teams. I'm Phil Dark. I'm from the US of A. With me is John and Roman. And can each of you just briefly share, who you are and where you're from?
Well, I'm John from Malaysia, and I get the privilege of living in South Africa and lead the International Sports Leadership School, amongst other things.
Hi, I'm Roman from Houston, Texas, and I have the privilege of running after school programs all throughout the city in Houston.
All right. So the first thing I want to just kind of jump into is what are some ways that each of you have seen conflict arise on your teams, either in the sports teams that you've been part of or in your sports ministry? So, John, why don't you start?
Oftentimes, I think it comes down to ego and pride. And that's always been a catalyst for why conflict happens. Differences. People are just different. Different in culture, different in biological sex, different in worldview, different in temperament, and different in our upbringing, education, experience, and all of that. Those differences just collide with each other. And I think the tendency is we do focus, or teams I've been a part of tend to focus more on what makes them dissimilar as opposed to what unites them, which is why sport is great, because that's a great unifier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How about you, Roman?
I think just to add to that, I think the reason why conflict happens so often is people wait so long to solve it. So they get mad at each other, angry at each other, and they let it build up in themselves, and then it blows up. If conflict was to be dealt earlier, I think it could have saved a lot of headaches for a lot of people. I always say, when you take a water bottle and if you just have a little bit of water in there and you spill it on somebody, it's not a big deal. But if you take a full water bottle and you just throw it at somebody, all of a sudden the person is mad. And I think that's a main issue, is that we want to avoid conflict and we think conflict is unhealthy, but then it just blows up into something worse. I think on my team, where we have the most conflict is around strategy, tactical conflict. We disagree on how to achieve results very often, and that creates a pretty big division sometimes, and walking through it, dealing with it, getting on the same page has been sometimes an obstacle for us.
Phil, could I speak into
Absolutely,
that a little
go for
bit?
it.
20 years ago, whenever we did a worldviews training, we would talk about monotheism, animism, pantheism, and how that shapes the outlook of people around the world. Today, what's been much more popular is the talk on guilt and innocence, power and fear. The third one is shame and
honor
and shame, right? And I think as an Asian, where I come from, we were raised never to push back, talk back against people who are older than you, and especially people in positions of power and authority. So that's in part why conflict builds up. A lot of it is felt. A lot of it is spoken at the in America you call it water cooler. So side conversations, but never confrontational or adversarial, and it builds and it builds and it builds.
Yeah. So true.
Absolutely. And I think that too, as you both are talking, I'm thinking some people, as you said, some people deal with conflict right away. Mm-hmm. It's like they love conflict. They're going to come into conflict. They're going to invite conflict. They're going to often create conflict, right? Because that's just the way they're wired. Other people will avoid conflict like the plague, right? And they're the ones often who will delay conflict, delay confrontation, delay coming into things. Even if someone's really doing something not great, they don't want to rock the boat, so to speak, right? So I kind of want to now come into this idea, and we're gonna get into the how do we really deal with it here in a minute. But I want to talk about, just take a step back and say how conflict is important for teams. Yeah. In order for a team to grow, in order for a team to be a high performance team, you need conflict, right? We talk about the storming phase, right? Why is conflict something that's important, and how can it be healthy for teams?
Yeah. I think most people think if we're having conflict on the team, then we're a bad team. And I think in my context, most people never get to that phase, and you'll see just a fake team. People who say, "Oh, we're best friends, we're great," but in the back of their heads and their hearts, they actually dislike each other. And I think in the Christian world in general, people see conflict as something sinful, as something that shouldn't be a part of the church culture. But actually, conflict is what builds trust on the team. It allows us to have honest conversations with one another. And I love throughout the New Testament that the authors of the New Testament show conflict, right? Paul approaches Peter and tells him, hey, why are you all of a sudden not living up to the standards we've said before? You don't want to share meal with Gentiles, or even the conflict about deciding, the Jerusalem Council, where the Jerusalem church were basically like, we don't know how to include Gentiles here, so we're going to make them do whatever we did as Jews. And then Paul and others come in and challenge them on that as well. And so I think throughout the church history, we see actually conflict as a place where trust is built, strategies discovered, the future then becomes much more clear for the team as they move forward.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is because we speak about love in the church a lot, and conflict is pitted as the complete opposite of love. So if there is conflict, that means there's an absence of love, therefore conflict is bad. So we never ever want to deal with it, and there's a lot of fakeness, pseudo team. So that's one reason. The other is people have not been taught how to handle it. And so there's a lack of skill, lack of awareness of what to do, and you just repeat what your culture transfers to you, which is, a combination of avoidance or accommodation or compromise, but never ever looking for collaboration, for example, And so these are some of the reasons, I think. Another one is I don't think we really understand covenant relationships, right? So oftentimes there's intolerance, and then there's a lot of talk in the world about, learning to embrace, to tolerate or embrace. But when you go to biblical covenant, it is so freeing, because now with my wife, I believe in covenant marriage. And so with my wife, we've got the safety and the freedom to be who we are, to look for better alternatives, to look for kingdom solutions, but yet embrace the diversity and be united and know that no one's going to walk out. Yeah. So the lack of understanding covenant, I think, plays a part in that.
Yeah. It's good.
Absolutely. And
Acts 15, right? Paul Barnabas, I think it's Acts 15. Separation of ways.
Right.
Proverbs, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
So it's not that the Bible doesn't have anything to teach us on conflict.
Absolutely. And I think that's that iron sharpens iron one, is a lot of people misuse that a lot of times. They come in and we got to come in and just be, loving with each other in a way that's this fluffy thing, right?
Yeah.
Iron sharpening iron is not fluffy. That's a very harsh process. It is banging, right? And so, it doesn't always have to be that way, but that's oftentimes what it looks like. And so the conflict can come into that. And there's this quote talking about, healthy versus unhealthy. You talked about it early on, right? When oftentimes we focus on what we disagree on rather than what we agree on, right? And so you start with disagreements, and we agree on 98% of the things and we disagree on 2. Let's focus on the 2 because that's what's going to be great. No, I mean, how can we come together on things? So that's one of the tools. But this quote by Patrick Lencioni is one of my favorite quotes when it comes to conflict. And he says, when there is trust, conflict becomes the search for truth. When there is no trust, conflict becomes politics, where there must be a winner and there must be a loser. Right? And so you were talking earlier about trust, and we're talking about conflict often helps develop trust. But if we as teams have a trust, center, so to speak, when conflict arises, we're searching for truth together, right? Another thing he talks about, Lencioni, is in meetings, if we come out of a meeting and there's still something to talk about in the hallways, we failed in that meeting.
Yeah.
We need to deal with it there in that room. So can you guys just talk about that in your teams as you've seen? Like, how have you built trust in teams to be able to have those conversations where at the end of a conversation when you're talking with each other, and you guys could go at it with each other for 15, 20 minutes, totally disagreeing. When you walk out of that room, you love each other, you care about each other, and you're still in that team together as teammates. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think for us as a team, there are a few things that we've implemented into our regular rhythm of team meetings. So number one, every week, we give not everybody, but a single person gets a necklace. And when we put a necklace over you, we honor you. we share with you, we just shower you with amazing compliments and various things like that. So it doesn't feel like, I've been a part of teams where it's only conflict. And when it's only conflict, it creates just this feeling of we're not moving forward. There's always people begin thinking, oh, there's a bunch of toxic people on our team. So I think a culture of honoring one another and celebrating one another needs to be a part of this. But another thing we've implemented is that once a month, we will have a session where everybody has to speak truth. So whatever you feel, whatever's on your heart, you have to bring it. And if it's towards someone, we ask that other person, we tell them, look, make it look like you're holding an imaginary tray. And this person will share, they'll put things on your tray. It doesn't mean that everything they say is truth, right? That's another thing. That doesn't mean that so take what they've put on your tray and go take it to the Lord. Ask God to reveal to you, like, what are some of the things that I actually need to change? What are some of the things maybe it's the person's perspective and it's not true? And that gave us so much freedom. And the third thing is we always say, look, I'm the type of person who loves conflict, to embrace conflict. On the team, I like to start conflict. But I've realized that's also not a good thing because my tone is often very wrong and my words are often very wrong. And one of my mentors said to me, look, if something happened, take 24 hours. Think about it, frame it in your head. You don't need to just, blow up on the spot and create this conflict, but take 24 hours. Don't send that email. Don't send that text. Don't say those words, and just examine your heart, your mind, and then prepare how you will actually say those things to your team or to that individual.
Oh, there's so much I want to say on this question. Brilliant question. I think in terms of depositing trust, I'll use 3 C's. One is, the character of the person. Are they trustworthy, right? Can you rely on their character? 2 is, can you rely on their competency? 3 is, can you rely on them being consistent? Some people can do that thing once, whether it's character or competence. But if there's consistency, they show up all the time and they're congruent. That helps to deposit trust. So I think that's kind of one part of your question. The other is related to teams that even Roman and I serve on. Learning to differentiate as an Asian, what's an issue and what's personal. So when we deal with issues, we're looking for solutions. And so when we want to look for solutions, we have this phrase called debate to find the best answer. So it's a debate, but it's not personal. It's not me versus you. It's, okay, we're dealing with ideas. And this is a safe space, creating psychological safety, which is a huge subject. Creating psychological safety so people can have dangerous conversation. But why? Not to win, but to find the best answer for the kingdom of God, or in this case, a sport movement-related problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah, no, that's so good. That's so good. And as I'm even listening to this, I'm thinking of the people like my wife who does not like conflict at all. And she will, if there's conflict in our house, she will hop in the car and drive around the block or go to the store. And
my wife does the same thing.
And it's so. How do we include those people into these and encourage those, that reserved, kind of people-focused person that doesn't want to engage anything because that's just how they're wired? How do we include them into this? And how have you seen success in that? Because we all have those people in our teams. And so when we talk about developing trust, that's great. That's, that's something, you and I, Roman, can do very, easier because we're just going to say what we think, So my daughter's husband says the great thing about, my wife is that I know what she's thinking all the time, and there are people like that. And then there's people that you don't know what they're thinking ever, unless somehow they feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable in that situation. So how can we create those safe spaces? How can we create those environments where everyone has the opportunity to flourish, knowing that those people who want to avoid conflict like the plague need the conflict to truly flourish?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Let's go back and forth. So there's a lady called Brene Brown, right? And she talks about vulnerability and how that builds trust. So for those who are highly vulnerable and very quick to share, then we encourage them to hold back. Don't always go first. Let others, perhaps in our context where people may not speak English as a first language, or there's a lot of shame and guilt in the culture and they've got to overcome that, allow them to go first if they're prepared to. And then for those that are not ready to be vulnerable, I think one of the best ways is if we're the leader of the team, to first set the example. Yeah. So if we're vulnerable, vulnerability attracts vulnerability. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thought.
Yeah, I think when I think about my relationship with my wife, I think the first 3 years, yes, that like she would drive and drive and drive, and I would wait and wait and wait, and then she would come back like nothing has happened. I think what helped is what John said earlier. You have to frame the reason for the conflict, that it's not just for us to fight each other, to blame each other, to scream at each other, whatever it might be, but it's for us to find a solution for X, Y, and Z. And I think that really helped her. I think second thing is people who avoid conflict, sometimes it's not that they're avoiding conflict, but they're just thinking through the conflict. So giving people space, like I tend to rush into the conflict, but understanding that my wife, I want to give her space to process conflict. And so as she processes, maybe it's an hour, 2 hours, a day or 2 days, then it's my job to come and ask her questions, process it together with her. So I don't need to rush all the time. But I think what changed things in our lives is just framing why we need the conflict right now. That if we don't deal with it, it's kind of that water bottle situation. We use that metaphor quite a lot. At one point, you're just going to blow up. I mean, there's not a single person in the world who can just avoid conflict, forever. It will blow up eventually, and it'd be too late.
Yeah, there are lots of frameworks on handling conflict. I think we need to learn about them, get educated on them. And if you're married, I would encourage you and your spouse to attend marriage enrichment, because you learn a lot of skills from others. You need community. We always say this: you can't smell your own breath, right? And your spouse, especially your children, your team, helps to mirror back the things that are planks in our eyes as much as we see the specks in other people's eyes. So I think we've got to learn frameworks. We do a lot of workshops in the sports movement or trainings in the sports movement, teaching people practical skills on how to resolve conflict. And it comes down to deep listening, learning to paraphrase, checking whether we've heard accurately and we've rephrased accurately, and then asking for potential solutions, seeking third alternatives together. So these are like really practical things, theoretically easy, but we got to practice, we got to simulate, we got to use case studies. And I think you just get better at it as you get older and have an attitude of being teachable.
Absolutely. No, that's so good. That's so good. As you're talking, I'm thinking about situations, and I'm sure the listeners are thinking about situations of when, I can remember early in my marriage, my wife would say, I need to process. And I said, what's that? Right? I mean, like, I process verbally. If we're going to have a disagreement, let's talk it out, right? Yeah. And she goes, and I said, how long? Okay, 20 minutes. Let's go. And I'll talk to you when I'm ready, right? And so to your point, to come back a couple days later and say, can we talk about it now? Because she would avoid it longer than might be healthy, right? So I think those are some, like you said, the different tools, the different things that we can use. There's so many things. We don't have time to get into all of them today, obviously. But as we, are kind of thinking through this, there are times where we're not going to resolve the conflict, right? We're going to have to walk away and say, we got to agree to disagree, right? So what does it look like to pursue that peace and reconciliation, pursue that without compromising truth or justice, and realize that there are times where we might not come away with an agreed upon solution that we're going to work on right now? What does that look like in our teams, that we are mission driven, we are vision driven, we are going toward the same goals at the end of the day? But what does it look like to have certain things that we agree to disagree on and can still work together as a team in unity?
There's this early church father who said the following phrase in Latin, but I'll say it in English because I can't speak Latin. In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. In everything else, charity. I think if I speak about myself, I think I sometimes get cluttered in my mind as to what is strategic, what's tactical, what's operational. And in our movement, we really must be united around the things that really matter. It's in our case, in our movement's case, it's our cause, our vision, and our heart values. Everything else, I think, it's fluid or adaptive based on context, based on season, based on God's leading. The preceding things I mentioned, those are not ones that you want to shift on, and they're not up for compromise. They're not up for discussion per se. And so those things we want to be united around. You go, Roman. I have one other thing, but I'll speak up.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we think about reconciliation, peace, unity, we think we have to remain on the same local ministry team. And I think that's not necessarily true, because I've had many team members in my life where we completely disagree on strategy. We completely disagree on mission, even vision. And I should bless them and say, look, you should go start your own team, or I should go start my own team. And that doesn't mean we hate each other. It means we're blessing each other to go and do what God has called us to do, right? We're still united together. So I think as teams, it's always important to analyze where's the conflict happening. So if it's a personal conflict, solve it, right? Invite others into it, speak life into one another. If it's a strategic, tactical conflict, you might be able to resolve it, specifically tactical conflicts. But when you're getting to vision, mission, values for your local teams, and there's just disagreement, you don't see things the same way, it's also okay to bless them and say, hey, let's part ways. We see that in the early church. As long as it not causes division, hate, towards one another, or jealousy, but you're blessing, you're supporting one another, you're praying over one another. I think that's key as well. You don't always have to feel like if somebody leaves my team, my organization, or my church, then we're not united anymore. No, we're still united as the body of Christ. God is just calling us to various things in various seasons and being okay to release people.
So good. Yeah. I think one of the blind spots we have is not being able to differentiate when we communicate what's fact. Tablecloth is black. Okay, that's fact. But what's opinion, what's preference, what's conviction, and what's absolute truth? So sometimes when I communicate, my opinion or my preference is voiced as absolute truth, non-negotiable. No, but it's my opinion because I see it from a certain perspective. So also having the humility to realize, hey, in this conversation, it's actually 2 people, 3 people speaking about our preferences.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily absolute truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do think that sometimes we need to learn how to sacrifice, That's another thing. Learn how to sacrifice your idea. Learn how to sacrifice your strategy. Even though you think it's the best, just lay it on the altar. If the team wants to go a separate way and you're still connected on the mission, vision, different way than you, just sacrifice. And it's totally fine. You don't have to hold on and leave. That's also very important for people to practice. I think that's where your prayer life, connection to the Holy Spirit, asking God to speak into situation, asking others from outside of your team to speak into situations is key. It's not all about you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just think about the soccer team, global football for our global audience that I coach, and the head coach and I disagree on a lot. Strategic, tactical. Like I would run a different formation a lot of times. I would change things up in a game. I'm the assistant coach. I know that I'm the assistant coach. So what he says goes. And, players will ask, why'd we do this? Why'd we do that? I'm like, you're going to have to ask him on that, because I actually will say to him, I disagree with him on that. But I agree because we are a team, and that's what we're doing because that's what he says to do. Now, there's some things that if he disagreed on, I would say, I need to coach somewhere else. if he's going to be, yelling and just demeaning and being at them all the time, I can't be working in that situation.
Yeah.
And if he disagrees on this, that's the only way I'm going to coach. But what we've decided, what we've seen as we've coached together for years is, the things that he didn't do before that I can come in and help even make him better on. It's taken time, but he's made those changes, right? And I've changed some different things too, and I've seen why he does certain things, and I still don't agree with them fully, but I'm okay with it because again, it's not the essential, right? It's not the essential. It's something that I can say I'm fine with that. Whether we run a 4-4-2 or 4-3-3, doesn't really matter in the big picture. Whether these girls are going to be better human beings at the end of this season, that matters, right? So how can we do that in our teams? If it is mission vision that they're like, I don't agree that we're going to go to the ends of the earth, I want to be more in Jerusalem. Well, okay, that's fine. Then you can find another ministry that does that, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So
I think back to your point, I think that's why values are critical. Most teams, they put values as just some things on the wall that nobody remembers. They're just inspirational. Our team this last year, we decided that our values are going to be what we are currently living out and very practical. So how do we actually live out these things? And that we evaluate each other as conflict arises based on the values. And if we are not living out to our values, for example, one of our values is we want to be servant-hearted disciple makers. And as we talk about disciple making, if people are all of a sudden, I don't want to make disciples anymore, that's what we evaluate. We want to evaluate each other based on our heart values first, not based on strategy or various things like that. And then after that comes your character. Right? We had an issue on the team where their character changed. It felt like overnight. So it took 6 months of long process of inviting others into the process, discussing character changes. So I think that's what you're referring to, right? If your value of how I want to coach is critical, and if your coach broke that value, you'd probably step out of the team. You would leave. So that's why values need to be not just something on the wall, but something you as a team live out. And evaluate.
Practically, so what we've done to teach other team members this is when you voice affirmation or exhortation or rebuke, it's like, I see this behavior and it reflects this value that we as a team have agreed on. Tell me more about that, especially if it's in an area of growth and improvement. So I see this behavior, it reflects this value. Tell me more what was going through your heart or mind at that point in time. Let's talk about it. And I think it becomes a learning exercise.
Yeah.
Well, man, we could talk for days about this topic, no doubt. And, we're in a world that is very divisive. We're in a world that is very polarized in a lot of things. So the more we can bring people together in the things that really matter, the better we will be in all our teams. And so as we wrap up, is there anything and these will be quick nuggets, it's kind of the speed round, anything you wish you would have known about resolving conflict when you started in ministry that you know now that you want to tell people that are just getting going?
I'll start with one. I wish I understood better unconditional love. How I look back now and realize, even today perhaps, how conditional I am, how much I said, that's a whole podcast in and of itself.
100%.
Right? Oh my goodness.
But you threw it out there, so we'll have to pick that up at a future podcast.
I would love to be the first to confess all my sins.
Okay. We'll all tune in for that one. That'll be good.
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest struggle has always been listening. Even when I create conflict, right, I want to get my points across, but I don't want to hear other person. The same thing when somebody brings something against me, I want to defend myself. And just slowing down, stopping, pausing, make it intentional that I will listen. And I think what John said earlier, paraphrasing. So don't just listen. Tell people, can I share with you what I just heard from you? Is this correct? That's been life-changing in many conflict situations in my life now, because in the past, I've made so many mistakes.
Can I add one more?
Yes, real quick.
I think confronting and owning personal insecurities. Yeah. I get triggered because of my insecurities, and that results in conflict. So oftentimes there may be an issue, but what influences the way I view the issue or try and resolve the issue is informed by my insecurities.
Yeah.
That the quicker we name it, own it, repent of it, forgive perhaps the perpetrator that instilled it in us or planted that seed in us. And obviously, I need community.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I need the Holy Spirit and the Word of God to align me daily, which is why the time abiding is so key.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I'm just going to finish up with saying Romans 12:18. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Right? We can't make anyone do anything, but we can come in with all these different tools that we've been talking about. We can love others, we can serve others, we can seek the unity, and we can pursue that together. And so, folks out there, thanks for joining us today. This is part of the Ready, Set, Go podcast series, and we hope that you're checking that out, readysetgo.world.